Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a sleep coach, and if you want to sleep well for the rest of your life, this channel is for you. In this special episode, we're going to talk about panic attacks. You are going to understand what they are, and you're going to see how the key to not having panic attacks lies in the safety behavior. In fact, it is avoiding the safety behavior that leads you to not having panic attacks. Hey there, I hope you're doing really well. Before I forget, I want to thank Faye for leading me in this direction. Faye has had panic attacks and I've meant to do this for a while. I hope this will be really helpful for you, Faye, and anyone else that is tuning in. So, a quick little background. I realized, as I've said before, pretty early on that insomnia has so much in common with anxiety and panic attacks. And I heard from Nick Wignall, who's guested this show a couple of times, that panic attacks are actually very straightforward and not that hard to get past when you understand them. That led me to ask for literature, and there was Andreas, another guest on this channel from Norway, told me to read this book, particularly a chapter in this book on panic attacks, and it was like mind blown. You know, I really understood what they were in that moment, and since then, I've met a lot of patients in clinic that have had these like things going on that they didn't understand, and I immediately recognized some panic attacks, and I could actually coach them pretty well just by understanding what they are. So what am I talking about here? Well, I'm going to use an example from clinic so we can start understanding what they are. And I had a patient in clinic to describe something to this effect, that they'd had a rocky relationship and they have split up with their partner. But since then, when the partner contacted them in any way, that was always what triggered a panic attack. It would be something like this, that they would get, for example, a text from their partner, from their ex really, and seeing that text would make them think, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to have a panic attack. And then they would have this first kind of like sensation somewhere, and then it would spread, it would escalate, and then sooner or later they would have kind of full-blown panic attack symptoms, and then they would sit down and wait, and eventually it would subside, and then and then it would be triggered again next time they heard from their ex. So that was what they were describing. And in that description, you see all the elements of a panic attack, which is a some type of trigger. It could be an obvious thing that you recognize, or it could be it could seem to come out of nowhere. It often starts with some type of physical sensation, a tingling, a pressure, a heartbeat, or something like that, and then comes the recognition that, okay, I think I'm going to have a panic attack. And then there's kind of the escalation phase where it becomes more widespread, and then finally the safety mechanism, and then the kind of de-escalation. So I'm going to use this model here to put it all in context. I think it will be really helpful for us to use our model. And so we have circumstances up here, which is things that just happen. In the case we just described, it was like getting a text from your ex, and then we have the thought, which is I'm going to have a panic attack. And then we have the emotion, which of course is anxiety, fear, very strong such emotions. And then we have, actually a reaction here, which is kind of like increasing heartbeat, maybe, tinglings, breathing fast, sweating, etc. That's a reaction that comes from an emotion. And then we have the result, which often is like increased perception, like, noticing all these things, which leads to like feedback here to the thought, which becomes like, oh, I'm really having it. And then the loop until there's an action, and that action becomes a safety mechanism, and then the result becomes like, it calms down, and the whole circle is broken. That's a panic attack. Now, before we go to like the key to how to not have them, I want to use one more example, which is, let's imagine that you are facing a physical threat. Let's say the circumstances, you are being charged, a bear is charging at you, right? Then your thought becomes, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. You become really fearful. Your action becomes you hide, and the result becomes you're safe. Now, in this example, imagine this. Your action became you hid, and you became, you saved your life. What has that taught you? Well, it has taught you that, yes, bears are dangerous. Like your action reinforces that. They're super dangerous. And in this example, that's of course good. It's good that you reinforce with your actions that bears are dangerous, because that will keep you safe. But check out what's going to happen when we have a perceived threat. And this is very important to know. A panic attack, cannot harm you. Oftentimes there is a real fear of something catastrophic, like a collapse. I'm going to, pass out, or something really, really terrible. I'm going to die. Something like that is often what you fear when you have a panic attack. Most people with panic attacks know that in fact that cannot happen, but that doesn't really help. And now here, okay, so check this out. Let's say we go back to our example of a panic attack, and we now know that actually this panic attacks are a perceived threat. They're not like a bear; they're a perceived threat. So you can now see this, and this is the big highlight. This is the big insight here, that the action of trying to avoid a panic attack, the safety mechanism, the thing you do to mitigate the panic attack, actually is what perpetuates it over time. When you are sitting down, or you're taking those deep breaths, or you are holding on to something to make sure you don't collapse or something catastrophic happens, and you start feeling better, that is actually what reinforces the thought that, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. That real fear, the thought that produces the fear, that thought is reinforced by those actions, and that's what keeps you having more and more panic attacks over time. So you can see here that the key to not having panic attacks is actually to allow them to happen, to not do the safety mechanism. Let's go back to our example. The person who got a text from their ex, thought, I'm gonna have a panic attack, etc., etc. They were, sitting down to make sure they didn't collapse. But guess what? If they understand that it's a perceived threat, and they say, okay, I'm not gonna sit down this time, and they see that, oh, this thing resolved without me doing anything, without my safety mechanism, then the thoughts begin to change. The thought that panic attacks are really dangerous, they can harm me, I have to do something to keep myself safe, that changes. And you start seeing that, oh, I don't have to do anything. It is a perceived threat. Your brain starts realizing, this is not a bear. There's nothing out there. It is a perceived threat. And although, like, initially the thought of not doing your safety mechanism is really scary, but it is the path towards not having panic attacks over time. I spent a lot of time thinking of how to word this. I hope this made sense. I really look forward to your comments and anybody else's comments as well on this video. For anyone with questions, of course, please leave a comment or send one to questions@thesleepcoachschool.com. Hope to have you here real soon. Until then, bye-bye.